Well, Jack, thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
All right, my name is Jack Sauter. I live in Conroe, Texas, and I love space exploration.
How long have you been interested in space exploration?
Oh, since my early teens. When I was maybe 11 or 12, my dad showed me Apollo 13, and I thought that it was a science fiction film until he told me, no, this is all based on a true story. In fact, pretty much the whole movie is true. And that got me interested. It's like, oh, this amazing film is real. I wonder what else is real that I don't know about. So I went to the library and I borrowed pretty much every nonfiction book that they had on space, and I've been hooked ever since.
And how old were you?
11 or 12. I mean, it's hard to remember, but somewhere around there.
And did you decide to pursue a career in space?
I wanted to. For a while, I wanted to be an astronaut, but then I just didn't really feel like that was something that I could do. So I ended up looking into doing engineering work instead, so that maybe I could work as an engineer in the space industry. But in college, I really struggled with that. So after a while, I was like, yeah, forget this. So I actually went to college and majored in journalism, and that was my focus for a while. And now I don't do any of that.
Yeah. So what do you do?
I am a content creator. I make YouTube videos and I stream on Twitch, and that's been my full-time job for the past 7 years.
Did you see about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, SpaceX had a job posting for a content creator for Boca Chica?
Oh, I didn't see that, no. And even if I had, I probably wouldn't have taken it. I kind of like where I'm at right now.
Oh, okay. I just thought that'd be so cool to be behind the scenes, talking to the welders and the engineers. And
no, I would love to be able to do that, but not for a full-time job.
Maybe that takes something away from a hobby whenever you're forced to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, have you seen For All Mankind? It's like an Apple TV show.
No, I've actually been following it more or less. I haven't actually watched it, but I have a general idea of what happens. Yeah.
I just imagine, you saw Apollo 13 thinking it was sci-fi, found out it was real, got excited.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who maybe is not familiar with the history of the time watches For All Mankind, gets excited about it and finds out it's fake. I just wonder what that does to their excitement level.
I do know that, fun fact, in the second season, there's a point where Sally Ride is seen like with a gun, like doing precision shooting against the bad guys, which actually would be true to real life because she was in the military, so she would know how to do that. So For All Mankind is like a what-if history, and everything that is there is either there was a concept for the spaceship or for the program, or it was theoretically possible for the times. So, you would be forgiven to think that was real, which I think is awesome. That definitely makes it a more unique series among space travel shows.
Yeah, I mean the way the footage is done and the way they integrate real footage with kind of like the randomization. I mean, just where do they get all those cars from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when did you find out that we were planning to go to the moon in 2024?
Probably before they knew themselves, because I mean, I was following since the Bush administration announced Constellation, and I was very aware of that happening. I think that was in 2005 when they announced that, and I was following that forever. And I saw the Ares 1X mission, which people don't even remember, but right when that was happening, the Obama administration canned the Constellation program to focus on commercial crew. And I guess at some point during the following years, they came up with the eventual shuttle replacement. It was going to be the exploration missions, and they were planning on eventually maybe getting to the moon by the late 2010s, early 2020s. And then the Trump administration finally set a hard date for 2024 to land on the moon. So I think I've been following since before the 2024. Since before the 2024 date was announced. I've been following since before that. So I pretty much known the whole time.
That's amazing. You're definitely in a rare category with the people that I talk to.
I am aware, yes.
Before I had a question about that. Before I get to that, I was looking at the Constellation program the other day, and according to this timeline, we were supposed to have a moon base in 2020.
That was wishful thinking.
Yeah.
The sad reality is that it's a government project, and Congress has agendas instead of the feelings inside you and me that get us excited to go to the moon. They have constituents in their states that they want to make sure don't get handed pink slips. So it's all about trying to keep as many jobs as possible, which means spreading the program out as long as possible, which people are always joking about how Artemis 1 hasn't even launched yet. They're stacking SLS and Kennedy right now. And then they're talking about how, SpaceX blew through 5 starships in a year.
No.
To me, though, it's apples and oranges because, yeah, SpaceX has been building starships nonstop, and it's amazing to see what they're doing, don't get me wrong. But the second SLS rocket will have people on it and will go to the moon. SpaceX just can't do that. If they were to do that, it would take almost as long and cost almost as much as what NASA's doing. So it's really interesting to see all of the different companies with their rockets and to see what all the long-term plans are for them. And I love what NASA's doing. I do understand that it's taking a long time, that it costs a lot of money, but that doesn't make me any less excited because, hey, the end result is we send people back to the moon for the first time in 50 years and probably faster than anyone else.
Yeah, it'd be really exciting. Do you plan to go to watch the Artemis 1 launch in November?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to at least attend that launch this year. If I could attend others, I would love to go and see the Starliner test later this month and the Inspiration 4 mission in September. I would love to see those, but if I have to miss those, I won't miss Artemis 1. It's the one that I absolutely have to see.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I think you get more bang out of your buck for going to that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to be the largest rocket launched since Saturn V, assuming the orbital Starship doesn't happen until after that. But it's really exciting because for the first time in 50 years, we have a moon rocket. It's done. It's just being put together right now. And once it's put together, it's going to go launch.
It's exciting. I hope it's successful. I mean, that's the one problem with not having so many iterations is...
Yeah, but that's also why they do so many tests. I mean, famously last year, the Green Run test at Stennis in Mississippi, the first one was kind of a failure because it ended after a minute. It was supposed to last for 8. But that's why we do those tests, to make sure that that kind of a failure doesn't happen during the flight itself. And, everyone's crossing their fingers that the first mission goes well, because if it does, the second mission will have people on it and we'll go to the moon, which it's so exciting because people haven't gone to the moon since 1972. So the current plan is 2023 for Artemis 2. That's a 51-year gap. That's crazy.
Do you think any of the moonwalkers will still be alive when the next set of moonwalkers return to Earth?
I sure hope so. I think there's 4 or 5 alive right now. Buzz Aldrin, of course, and Jack Schmitt, who was the last person to arrive on the moon. Trying to remember, I think Dave Scott is still alive, and Charlie Duke. So I think that might be it, unless I'm forgetting anyone. So yeah, that's still 4 people who are alive right now, and I'm sure that they will last a few more years. And of course we have several more people who have gone to the moon but didn't land who are still alive as well. The oldest astronaut still alive, Frank Borman, was one of the first people to go to the moon over 50 years ago, and he's still alive. Same with Jim Lovell, the commander of Apollo 13, and several others. And I'm sure a bunch of them are just holding out to stay alive long enough to see the next generation go to the moon. Although they're also just badass dudes, so that probably has something to do with it as well.
And they're also probably some of the finest, fittest human specimens out there.
I mean, when they were hiring the first astronauts, they were going for that, the most fit people basically on the planet. And they got them, and, the fact that they, it's been 50 years and a lot of them are still alive, that's just, very, very fit, very healthy, and, yeah.
Now, you're a content creator, probably, constantly trying to get your content to get viewed and get out there. Now, NASA has kind of like the same problem about, not that many people know that we're going to the moon in 2024. But, I mean, it looks like they're doing everything they can do. I mean, their social media is blowing up. It got mentioned in the State of the Union address. It's been on the news.
Yeah.
What do you think it would take for it to actually sort of make it into the national consciousness?
Well, probably the biggest thing would be a lot of other problems going away, unfortunately. Our country is not the most united right now. There's a lot of things tearing our friends and families apart. And I think that's more on people's minds right now than a trip to the moon. Not to mention, politicians have been spouting we should return to the moon for 50 years and nothing's happened yet. So I think what will really get people's attention is when it happens. Now, it is nice to see that space in general is more on people's minds, mostly thanks to SpaceX. I mean, every time there's a Falcon 9 launch, no matter what it is, even if it's just a Starlink launch or a rideshare mission, there's a million people who watch the live stream just to see the launch, even for just those few minutes leading into the flight. Of course, the Falcon Heavy flight had like 20 million people watch it, and the Demo 2 mission last year with Bob and Doug had like 15 million. So the interest for space travel is there. It's just people don't really show up for it until it's actually happening. Until then, it's all launch dates that slip and political propaganda. And I think most people are just more interested in what's going on right now, today, or this week, rather than 3 years in the future.
And also the perception that it's dangerous. People think about, the Challenger. I think for my generation, we were all in elementary school when the Challenger happened. So that's been kind of something that's come up on these interviews a lot. We just let the garbage truck do its thing real quick.
Yeah, that's a loud truck. My mother was a teacher during Challenger. She watched it live with her class, which, I only ever hear about it in history books, and of course I've seen the footage, but I can't imagine actually being there watching it in person. I think I heard one statistic that as many as half of all school children watched it live in the United States. So for a lot of people, if they've seen anything live, it was probably that on television. So yeah, there is the perception that space is dangerous, but there's also, you got to understand that we've learned a lot since then. We've implemented so many safety procedures and checklists and just making sure that launch conditions are perfect and that the spacecraft is as healthy as can be, and that the risk of anything going wrong, much less loss of life, is so low that it's more worth it to send people to space than to keep them down here on Earth. And I know so many people at NASA and at SpaceX and other companies who their sole job is to make sure that those safety features are implemented, and they all say the same thing, that every single person involved in human spaceflight is making sure that they're doing the absolute best job possible, because they are putting other people's lives in their own hands. And it will continue to be that way for the Artemis program. And that's why I'm so confident that we will hit that. I shouldn't say I'm confident that we'll make it there in 2024, but maybe within a year or two of that.
Well, what I think is amazing is coming into the new administration, the line about NASA was, we need to reevaluate the stage, we need something realistic. we need to do something that's not politically driven, on and on and on. And then Bill Nelson comes in and he's like, I think we're going to keep the 2024 date.
Yeah, I was so excited for that. There's one thing that I think most people will agree was great about the Trump administration, and that was the handling of NASA. I was very skeptical of Jim Bridenstine being the new administrator because he was a politician. He hadn't worked anywhere in the space industry before then. But he turned into one of the best administrators NASA's ever had because he had those political connections. He had that savvy to talk to people, to persuade them to make deadlines, to try and push just a little bit further and making stuff happen. And he was very passionate about space in general, just like you and me. So he was pretty much the one who's like, I think we can get to the moon in 2024. And then coming into the new administration, we didn't know what the new space policy would be. That was one thing that that President Biden during the election had basically said nothing about. And then he made Bill Nelson the administrator, and of course, Administrator Nelson flew on the shuttle. He flew on the last shuttle flight before Challenger. So he has spaceflight experience, and he was a senator from Florida for, I think, 40 years. And so he's very similar to former Administrator Bridenstine in that they're politicians, but they love space. And I think Administrator Nelson looked at this timeline and looked at these objectives and said, you know what? This is still a really good idea. And I'm very happy that during the transition, as so rarely happens, the new president agreed with the outgoing president's space policy. Usually, every 4 to 8 years, a new president is like, nope, that's my predecessors. I don't want anything to do with that. I'll scrap it and come up with a new policy, which of course can be fine for some things, but for space, it tends to lead to stagnation and slowing down of progress. So I'm really happy to see that pretty much everything from the old administration is still in place. Nothing's really changed. So I can't tell you how excited that made me when I saw it all begin to unfold, because I was so worried that the Artemis program would be scrapped and something new would come up. But nope, Artemis program is essentially set in stone at this point. It will continue to happen no matter what, and now it's just a matter of when.
And I think pretty much all the hardware for Artemis 1, 2, and 3 is in some stage of development.
Yeah, Johnson Space Center posted a few months ago pictures of the Artemis 3 Orion being built, and it was just amazing to me to look at this and realize this is going to send people to the moon, and the occupants are going to walk on its surface. It's not concept art, this is real hardware being built, actually something you can touch and feel and sit in, and there are astronauts right now training for those missions. And my guess is after Artemis 1, at the very least, we'll get the crew of Artemis 2 announced. Maybe Artemis 3, maybe not, but that's just amazing to me that I think internally the crew of Artemis 2 is set in stone. They just haven't announced it yet.
Well, we definitely know one of them is going to be a Canadian.
That is true, yeah. There is as part of NASA's deal with the Canadian Space Agency, they will be flying a Canadian on the crew of Artemis 2 and probably Artemis 3. And that was really exciting to read, because that's going to be the first time that anyone who's not an American will be going to the moon.
Now, I'm pretty excited about us going to the moon. You're pretty excited about it. But some people look at this and say, what are we going to get out of it? We have all these problems on Earth, hunger, world peace, global climate change, etc. Why are we spending these resources to send people to the moon when we have all these other issues? And I was kind of curious on how you think and approach that sort of discussion.
Well, there's not really an answer that'll make everyone happy, of course. There are plenty of people in Congress, some big name people, who feel like anything that's not devoted to that is a waste of time and money. I think that the biggest thing that we can get out of those missions is inspiration, because like I was saying earlier, millions of people tune up to SpaceX whenever they launch a rocket. Imagine how many millions more will tune in to NASA when they start sending people to the moon. And there's plans to send 4K cameras to the moon to just broadcast 24/7 from the surface. I'm sure that SpaceX will be happy to help with that. When it was announced that the human landing system was awarded to SpaceX for Starship, I had posted on my Facebook that I wouldn't be surprised if they sent a little CubeSat or a Cube rover up there first with a little camera just to broadcast the landing from the lunar surface. You know, that is such a SpaceX thing to do.
That would be cool.
And as soon as I posted it, so many of my friends were like, yo, that would be so cool, and I could see them doing it. Just the very idea of seeing fellow human beings walking on the surface of another world in real time, if that isn't enough to get you excited and make it want to happen, then I don't know what will.
Well, you know, whenever Sputnik launched, it was kind of like got global attention. Yuri Gagarin's like got global attention. You know, of course, Apollo 11 landing on the moon got global attention. But do you think our next landing on the moon will raise that same level of attention?
The same level, that is a very hard question to answer, especially since I'm enthusiastic about space. When Prince William got married, that was a global event. Everyone was into it. I remember staying up until like 3 a.m. to watch the live stream. And that's not something that I'm interested in. That's not something that most people are interested in, especially Americans. But the whole world watched because we were so excited for it. I don't know, just because I'm on the inside, not the outside. I don't know if the Artemis missions are going to generate that kind of interest. But I do know that whenever I tell people about we're going to the moon really soon, within the next few years, and it is set in stone, that it does at the very least catch their attention.
And talking about catching attention, you know, we have like maybe 600 people who have gone to space. You know, at some point, you know, mission badges get replaced with boarding passes.
Right. I am looking forward to the day where every single spacefarer does not have a Wikipedia page.
Yes. But you know, what about sending people that already kind of have that attention? You know, there's Tom Cruise that's going to the International Space Station.
Yeah.
Seems like that would cause that news to go into a lot of circles that probably have no interest in space, but would be like, oh wow.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that flight personally. And of course, we've got Discovery's Who Wants to Be an Astronaut show, the winner of whom will get a free week-long stay on the station. You know, there's definitely a lot going on right now that will make space a whole lot more commonplace. And of course, this doesn't even mention Spaceship Two and New Shepard, which will be doing suborbital flights on a fairly regular basis with a half dozen people on every single flight. So, like I said, I'm looking forward to the day where every single person who's gone into space isn't a big name, where it really could come to the point where if you want a quick trip to space on a suborbital flight, you just need to save up the same amount of money as if you were going to Disney World and just pay that, go, have your trip, and enjoy yourself. And I think that's the ultimate goal for most people, especially American middle-class citizens, to look at space travel as just a trip.
And you know, if Starship actually starts doing point-to-point travel and kind of lives up to the vision they have for that, I mean, perhaps your trip to Disney World and your trip to space could be one and the same. You could spend, you know, like the price of a first-class airline ticket, go from Houston to Tokyo in like 30 minutes, and go to Tokyo Sea or something, or Disney Sea.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Don't get me wrong. I think that we're still a ways away from that. I tend to think of SpaceX development as Elon Musk time. He tends to be a bit optimistic with timelines. I know that they're still planning on having their orbital flight for Starship. They're still trying to make it happen this month, but at this point, if it happens by the end of the year, I'll be happy. And then, of course, they made it very clear they're going to be doing hundreds, if not thousands, of Starship flights before they start putting people on board. And And they're just one company, right? They're definitely the highest profile company, but we have so many other companies that are doing suborbital flights, who are making small rockets, and then of course we got tourist companies like Axiom Space, which just appear out of nowhere, and now they've booked 4 missions with SpaceX. Not to mention Space Adventures, who are working with SpaceX and Boeing for Starliner. So many things going on right now, which is why I'm so excited. But that also means that there's more competition, which means prices will go down, and total number of times for every single thing happening will go up. Just companies trying to compete with each other, trying to make themselves more appealing than the others. Even with all that, though, I still think we're a few years away. Maybe 10 to 15 years away from space travel becoming commonplace enough that you and I could think about making it happen.
Now, this month, Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos are both going to space on their vehicles. What do you think about that?
I couldn't be more excited. Of course, I have to point out Richard Branson's flight to space has an asterisk because he only passes the U.S. definition of space, not the internationally recognized one. Still an incredible feat, don't get me wrong. That is definitely something to be excited about. It's just, he's gone to space if you kind of squint. I'm excited for it because Spaceship Two has been in development for 10 years. I remember when the VSS Enterprise incident happened, where a pilot lost his life and another was injured. I remember that happening like 2010-ish, something like that. And I'm happy to see that they sort of rebounded from then, and that they're truly getting ready to actually start making this a regular thing. It's just been a long time coming. New Shepard, I'm definitely excited for, because it feels like every time they've flown, it's been a flawless flight, and I've just been waiting on them to finally announce, we're sending crew up, this is how much it's going to cost. And when they announced that the first crew would include Jeff Bezos, I was kind of shocked. I didn't see that coming. But it kind of makes sense, because he just retired as CEO from Amazon to focus all of his energy and time on Blue Origin. He really wants to dedicate his time to that now. And before, it was more like a little offshoot thing that he was doing on the side because he likes space so much. Now he's focusing on it, and I think that him sending himself into space on his first crewed New Shepard flight is the perfect way to show the public how serious he is about it. And of course, the fact that he's taking his brother for free, and he's taking Wally Funk for free, that was announced yesterday, and I couldn't have been more excited. I've known about the Mercury 13 for years, and it's nice to see one of them actually make the flight to space and become the oldest person ever to go to space. And of course, whoever paid $28 million for the final seat, we don't know who that is yet, and I would love to know who. And that day when the bidding was happening, when it finally ended, I was like, there's no way anyone paid that much, but someone did. So.
Yeah, I guess some of the money who was as excited as we are was like,
yeah. They're either excited or they're preparing the best elevator pitch in history. It's exciting to see New Shepard, just because it's been so long coming, and every single flight they've done has been flawless, and they actually passed the Kármán line. But I don't want to diminish the importance of Spaceship Two. Spaceship One, of course, was the world's very first private spaceship. It was the very first time that somebody went into a spaceship that had not been made by a government facility and went to space. And of course, Spaceship Two is the evolved version of that, that'll eventually be able to send paying customers to the edge of space. There's something like 300 people who paid, some of them 15 years ago, the money necessary in order to take that flight, and I'm sure they're happy to finally be able to pick their dates. I'm excited for both of them for various reasons, but if you were to ask me bluntly, I think I'm more excited for New Shepard, but for the sole reason that it actually passes the Kármán line.
So if it was safe and affordable, I presume you would go to space?
In a heartbeat.
Like, how far would you go? Suborbital, to orbit, the moon?
If I had the choice to go to the moon, I would. but I understand that the odds of that are very low of ever happening, unless Izaki Maezawa picked me for Deer Moon for some strange reason. I think that the best chance that someone like me has of going to space, the farthest would probably be the ISS. And even then, I think that it's going to become more and more common for space tourism to just target Earth orbit in general. There's the Crew Dragon Space Adventures flight, which is going to go to a high apogee. Currently, the highest orbit ever attained by humans that didn't go to the moon was on Gemini 11, and that's going to target a height of almost twice that, I believe. So I think that that's what's going to become more and more common, is just flights to Earth orbit without a target in mind, which the most recent time that happened was Columbia. After that, of course, with the exception of the final Hubble service mission, every shuttle flight went to the station so that if something were to happen to the shuttle, they could stay on the station until it was safe to return to Earth. But the limitations of the shuttle are no longer a thing. Now, Crew Dragon can go anywhere in Earth orbit. It doesn't have to have a destination. In fact, Inspiration 4 doesn't have a destination. It's just going to float there for a few days. And I think that just considering the cost to lease out the station for a trip, I think most people are just going to opt to stay in orbit for a few days to take some pictures and then come back down. But yeah, if given the chance, I would totally go to the station or the moon. But honestly, at this point in my lifetime, if I could just take a New Shepard 10-minute hop to space, I would take it.
How safe does it need to be?
Honestly, I would pick anything that's flying right now. I have confidence that in the past 60 years since space travel has begun, that we have come to understand the problems with space travel, and that we have figured out ways to overcome them to the point where it is safe for people to go. And there's training involved. So if something were to happen in space, we would have the ability to overcome it and to safely return. So how safe does it need to be? As long as nothing happens during my flight, I'm happy.
Now, affordability is kind of a harder thing to talk about, but one concept I have in order to measure affordability is how much of a year's income would you be willing to dedicate towards this?
Oh, man. Oh, man. That's a good question. I would probably, I wouldn't say a year's income, actually. I would probably say $10,000. If a trip to space was $10,000, then I would spend a few years saving up the money, probably a few, maybe a decade even, you know. But I would, if space travel ever got down to 10 grand, I would make it happen. If it's as low as 100 grand, that's still just too much for me. I mean, people are used to paying $50 for a car, maybe $150 to $250 for a house. I mean, it obviously depends on the house and the person, obviously, but those are things that you own and that you get to keep for a while. A trip to space is finite, and it's hard to justify any significant amount of money beyond the cost of an elaborate vacation.
Indeed. I mean, even the worst car, you'll have that sitting in your driveway forever, but that New Shepard flight, 16 minutes after you start it, it's over.
Yeah. And I mean, New Shepard is interesting because you spend the day before in training. It's a single day's worth of training. Jeff Bezos is going to go through that. He knows nothing about the trip. He's going to arrive at the facility the day before, spend 8 hours in a schoolroom learning the procedures, and then the next day he's going to get in and take his flight. And that's what it would take for someone like you and me to go into space, is where we can keep our jobs and not spend too much time away from our families, just spend 2 days, one day learning the flight, one day taking the flight, and of course at a reasonable cost as well.
Do you think, looking out into the long-term future, do you think humanity will be forever Earth-centric, just kind of like taking these little side trips? Or do you see a point where humanity's kind of branched out to the solar system and beyond, and Earth is just one of many places to visit?
In the far future, I say we're definitely going to be a multi-planet species. Of course, that is Elon Musk's ultimate plan. In his words, he wants to die on Mars, just not on impacts. Within this decade, I don't see it happening. Honestly, maybe by 2050, not even. I just don't think that there's going to be that many people who are interested in leaving the Earth, potentially for the rest of their lives. I do believe that there will be people on Mars by 2050, maybe even a substantial amount of people, but I don't think that it'll be permanent habitats. I think it'll more be a base, like the ISS. The ISS has had people on it since 2000. There are many people alive who are adults who have never known a time where people were not in space. But the longest anyone's lived up there is about a year. And even then, like, by the time it was over, they were just ready to go home. You could stay up there longer. As far as we understand, there's nothing really problematic with staying in orbit around the Earth for 5 to 10 years. But after a year of not seeing your home, it just does something with your psyche. It just makes you crave coming back on Earth and being a person. And we would have to overcome that. And I'm sure people would just press through it. If you were to live on Mars and you were aching for Earth, you would probably just be like, well, I can't exactly just go because it's a 2.5 year flight. But I think most people are just going to want to stay here, or at least come back here.
Do you think the people that want to go to Mars are sane?
I have nothing wrong with wanting to go to Mars. I would love to see astronauts walking on Mars within my lifetime, of course. I just don't know if people want to go there and stay.
Yeah, I think there definitely have to be a period where people are just going, testing it out, coming back. Well, I kind of envisioned these videos as being maybe for a Martian 100 years, 200 years from now.
Yeah, and that's part of why I agreed to this interview, is because what you're doing with these videos is you're documenting what normal people in the present day think about space travel, either in the near or far future. And it's being documented, it's going to be preserved. So there will be people in the future who will have access to these videos, and they'll be able to look back in the past and understand what we were thinking back now. Of course, I'm different from most of the people that you've interviewed because I actually know all that's going on. But it would be interesting to see 100 years from now the difference between me and people who aren't in the know, and looking back and comparing those. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's very important to include people that are enthusiastic too. It'd be a really sad story to have 1,840 videos of people going, nope, had no clue, don't know why we're going.
Yeah.
Never go.
Yeah.
Well, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Honestly, nothing really comes to mind. I'm enthusiastic for us returning to the moon. It's going to happen. And it's great to know for the first time in my life, it's actually for sure this time going to happen. I grew up just asking my parents, why haven't we gone back to the moon? Short answer, politics. The long answer is we just haven't been ready to go back, and now we're ready. And I'm happy to be alive right now to see it. I missed the first time, but this time we're going, and we're going to stay, and I'm happy that I can at least see that. And I'm looking forward to traveling to Florida to see those launches, and hopefully meet some of those people who make that journey.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.